You and I have both known the moment when the prayer was honest, the words were lovely, the quotations flowed, and yet, when the Amen was spoken, the heart still stood in the doorway, watching, unfed, as if we spoke toward God but did not meet Him, as if we reached with our best vocabulary and touched only the echo of our own thought. That is not failure of devotion. That is the quiet hunger under our prayers, asking for bread and not description, asking for presence and not performance. We are living in a day of constant input. Letters, screens, headlines, opinions. And without realizing it, we carry that same noisy stream into our devotions. We narrate to God. We report to God. We lecture to God. We pile words upon words and wonder why peace does not deepen. The mind that keeps score of the world tries to keep score in prayer, and the result is fatigue. You know it. I know it. The greatest difficulty you are going to have, because it has been the greatest difficulty I have had, is letting speech give way to silence, letting the self-explanation give way to God-realization. Listen gently. Prayer becomes communion the instant it stops trying to reach God and begins recognizing God already present. Not a ladder to climb, not a system to master. There is one practice, and it is not a technique you perfect. It is a consent you offer. One silent consent to the indwelling Christ. Not, I am performing a better prayer, but God is here. God is the life of my life. God is omnipresence, so where could I go to find God except where I am? God is omniscience, so what could I inform God of? God is omnipotence, so whom must I persuade? Do not think I am offering theology by argument. This is not a debate, this is a doorway. In a few moments, and in the hours that follow, we will not discuss communion, we will taste it. Now, even now, close your eyes just a moment and notice there is something called I. Not the talker, not the worrier, not the planner, just the bare sense I. Rest there without words. Let your words kneel and submit to the silence. In that stillness, hear what has always been true. I in the midst of you am mighty. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Lo, I am with you unto the end of the world. When you open your eyes, remember this. Our work together is not to sharpen phrases, not to accumulate sacred sentences. Words have their place when they are surrendered. Not words against silence, but words submitted to silence until the living Christ is recognized within. Then our language becomes witness, not effort, echo, not invention. We will learn to let prayer fall from striving to recognition. God is, God is, God is. And in that recognition, the heart is touched, the hunger is met, and communion is no longer a hope. It is the atmosphere in which you breathe. Stand still in that and prepare yourself. We are going to make this contact daily, until peace is not visited, but lived. So let us be very honest and very gentle with ourselves, because this next part is tender. Most of what we have called prayer has been a campaign to improve a person. We bring our fear, our pain, our accounts, our relationships, and we say, "Oh God, fix me, adjust me, shine me up." And then, because we have used holy words, we believe we have been spiritual. It is not insincerity. You have been devoted, I know that. The obstacle is subtler, making the entire enterprise of prayer orbit the personality. my health, my success, my peace, so that even the sacred vocabulary becomes a mirror turned toward me. How do we know? Because the mind that says, I am blessed, I am strong, I am spiritual, is the same mind that 5 minutes later is calculating, bargaining, or terrified. If you are spiritual and perfect, what do you want help for? If you are harmoniously supplied, why are you pleading with God for rent money? If the human I is already the light, why does it need to shout to convince itself? We have created a strange theater. Human beings walking around with eyeglasses, aching backs, and anxious hearts, chanting, I am spiritual, as if repetition could change the costume. That is not sin, it is hypnosis. But wake up, and you will see the problem was never fixed by polishing the mask. Instead of this I am business, we change our treatment to God is. Not I am wealthy, but the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Not I am healthy, but God is life, the only life, the undivided life expressing as being. Not I am protected, but God is a fortress and a shelter. Underneath are the everlasting arms. God is omnipresence. Where could danger come from? God is omniscience. Where could confusion reside? God is omnipotence. What power is left to frighten you? God is, God is, God is, and in that recognition, the personal claimant grows quiet, and the reality begins to reveal itself. Do you see the turn? We are not building a better human, a more efficient Adam. We are yielding to the Christ that was never absent, never fragile, never in need of repair. I can of my own self do nothing is not a confession of weakness. It is the doorway to grace. My doctrine is not mine, is the end of the ego arguer, and the beginning of presence living itself as you. So we prepare for the one practice. Not more words to tighten the grip of the personality, but a consent that lets it rest. The personal sense stops talking long enough for the divine sense to be recognized. And in that stillness, the gentle assurance rises of its own accord. I in the midst of thee am mighty. I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. Lo, I am with thee unto the end of the world. In a moment we will make that contact deliberately. For now, let the shift settle. Not I am, but God is. Here is the inner reorientation. Simple enough to say, transformative enough to open the door. Not I am wise, but God is omniscience. Not I am safe, but God is my fortress and my high tower. Not I am supplied, but the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Not I am healthy, but God is life, the only life, the undivided life appearing as being. Not I am loving, but God is love, infinite love without opposite. Do you feel the center move? We are taking the attention off the claimant and setting it upon the source. We are ceasing to decorate the persona and beginning to acknowledge reality. God is life. God is love. God is law. God is light. God is presence nearer than breathing, closer than hands and feet. God is the only power, so there is none beside to fear or to appease. God is substance, so form is not a gamble, but an expression. God is cause, so effect cannot argue with its principle. God is omnipresence, therefore I do not go to find God, I yield where I stand. God is omniscience. Therefore, I have nothing to inform, only truth to behold. God is omnipotence. Therefore, there is no second power to overcome. God is. God is. God is. And as that litany rises, the personal voice quiets, the strain leaves the forehead, and prayer ceases to be an argument and becomes a recognition. Please notice, this is not positive thinking dressed in church clothes. It is a change of reference point. Positive thinking says, I will hold a bright thought until it becomes true for me. Realization says, God is whether or not my mind agrees, and as I consent to that fact, it reveals itself. Positive assertion seeks to add strength to the human person. Recognition witnesses the presence that forever is the life of individual being. I can of my own self do nothing is not dismal. It is liberating, because the weight of self-improvement falls away and the grace of God begins to carry. My doctrine is not mine, ends the debate in the head and opens the ear of the heart. And do you see how naturally this moves us into silence? Once you acknowledge God is, what is left to push, to persuade, to manipulate? The bargaining stops. The breath deepens. We listen. In that quiet, a gentle voice that is not located in the brain begins to be felt. Fear not. I in the midst of thee am mighty. I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. Silence is not emptiness. It is the atmosphere in which the statement, God is, ripens from words into presence, from theology into life. In that hush, the infinite invisible is no longer a phrase. It is the activity of your very being. So begin to let the habit form. Before the day's demands assemble, sit a few minutes and shift the center. Away from I am to God is. Whisper it if you must, and then let even the whisper go. God is life. God is love. God is law. God is here. Let the phrases wash the mind clean of effort until there is only a consenting stillness. There, without words, the inner assurance takes over, and you will know by feel rather than by phrase that the door has opened and communion has begun. Now let me show you why the ear of the heart seems dull when, in truth, it is only crowded. Picture the little show a hypnotist puts on. He touches a man's shoulder and whispers, "A white poodle is trotting across the stage. Be careful." And our friend, an honest, sensible fellow 5 minutes before, jumps up on his chair, argues with thin air, scolds the poodle, bargains with it, looks for a leash, and spends the evening exhausted. Everyone else laughs, but to him it is terribly real. Now imagine a well-meaning counselor rushing up to help, offering to put ointment on the poodle's paw, to train it, to chase it, to pray over it. All of that is motion inside the suggestion. Nothing changes until the touch is removed, the suggestion broken. Then, without struggle, there is no poodle to heal. He did not overcome a dog, he awakened. That is what happens to prayer when it stares at appearances. We go to God with the symptom, the bank balance, the quarrel, the headline. And, with great devotion, we talk to God about the poodle. We measure our prayer by whether the dog moved. It's closer. Now it's farther. Ah, it seems angry today. No wonder the brow tightens and the breath shortens. We are arguing in a dream and calling it spirituality. Not, I am clever enough to chase off poodles, but God is omnipresence. Where could a second presence come from? Not, I am strong against evil, but God is omnipotence. What other power remains to resist? God is, God is, God is. And in that light, there is nothing to manage but the returning of attention. You do not heal what is not there. You awaken from the suggestion and find reality intact. In twilight, you see a snake and leap. The light reveals a rope, and there is nothing to conquer but fear's picture-making. You watch railroad tracks meet on the horizon and worry over the collision. You walk down the line and the meeting vanishes. So with pain that shouts louder than truth, with lack that paints figures in red ink, with conflict that reenacts itself in memory all night long, each a white poodle in the mind, persuasive, noisy, and unreal in the light of God. Name the modern poodles and watch them blush. Compulsive self-assessment. How am I doing spiritually? As if the tape measure could add 1 cubit to stature. Spiritual performance. If I say it longer, faster, holier, I will make it true. As if truth needed shine. Fear of the future. What if? As if tomorrow were outside the one presence. The itch to control outcomes. Let me fix them, arrange them, manage them, as if cause were personal. Even the craving to feel something sacred in prayer is a poodle, chasing an effect instead of consenting to the cause. Silence is how the spell breaks. Not by wrestling the picture, but by starving it. In the hush, we stop feeding the appearance with words, with analysis, with self-heroics, and we return to what never left. God is. God is life, unfragmented. God is love, without opposite. God is law, unbreakable. God is here. Stand still and let the suggestion thin out for lack of your attention. Then the gentle assurance becomes audible without sound. Fear not. I, in the midst of thee, am mighty. I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. This is not passivity, it is awakening. Withdraw the gaze from the white poodle of the mind and place it where reality lives. And in that placement, prayer ceases to be strain and becomes communion. Now we come to the one thing necessary. The single practice that makes all the difference. It is not an achievement. It is a consent. A quiet, wordless yielding to the presence already within. Not trying to get God's attention, but realizing God's attention is already upon you. Not sending words upward, but receiving the kingdom within. Not directing prayer, but letting prayer pray us. This is the pause in which the personal speaker steps aside and the living I comes gently forward. The I that never slumbers nor sleeps. The I that says, I, in the midst of you, am mighty. Let me be plain about what this is not. It is not blankness. We are not trying to turn off the mind by force or to slip into a trance. It is not repression. We are not shoving thoughts down into a basement. It is not a hunt for pictures, lights, or tingles. Those are the poodles of sensation in religious dress. It is not spiritual performance, counting breaths, timing holiness, grading silence. Rather, it is the simplest turning within, a returning of attention to the fact God is. God is life. God is love. God is law. God is here. And in that recognition, thoughts may pass as clouds. We neither chase nor fight them. We let them go by while we remain with the bare awareness of presence, consenting, yes, be thou what thou art in the midst of me. How do you consent? You stop instructing. You stop improving the prayer. You become still enough to feel the quiet I behind the talker. If a word appears, let it be a doorway, not a speech. Father, hear. And then let it fall away, for the assurance begins to rise of its own accord. Lo, I am with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Fear not. I am thy life, thy wisdom, thy sufficiency. Do you see? You did not manufacture that. It was there before your asking. Your silence did not earn it. Your silence revealed it. This is recognition, not effort. Not, I am bringing truth to bear, but God is the truth bearing itself as my very being. Not, I am summoning strength, but God is omnipotence, and so there is no second power to overcome. Not, I am securing supply, but the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and so form answers to its source without your pushing. In this consent, the relationship shifts, no longer me speaking to God across a distance, but God revealing himself as the life of me, right where I am. Sit a few minutes in this each day, and often in the pauses of the day. Do not measure it. Do not peek to see if it is working. Rest. Let the inner eye keep vigil while the mind loosens its grip. Then the atmosphere changes. A hush is born in the midst of traffic. A wisdom moves before words. A love holds before hands. This is communion beginning. God is. God is. God is. And the wordless yes becomes the prayer that prays you. Lo, I am with you unto the end of the world. I in the midst of you am mighty. Now let us practice. Sit as you are. Let the hands rest where they fall. Allow the shoulders to soften and drop an inch. Loosen the jaw. Breathe, but do not arrange the breath. Let the tide come and go of its own accord. We are not going to do anything to get to God. We are going to discover that God is here. Now close your eyes and realize, before any thought comes, before any word tries to help, there is awareness. There is a simple fact of being. There is I. Do not touch it with description. Do not reach for your name tag, Joel, Mary, Bill. Leave the resume on the chair for a moment. Let the roles hang on the hook by the door. Not parent, not partner, not professional. Not the one who succeeded or failed, not the one who was wounded or applauded. And yet, undeniably, I am. Not, I am this, not, I am that. Only I. Notice that it is present without effort, like quiet light in a room before you switch on the lamps. This is the threshold. Let the mind do whatever minds do for a moment. If it brings a picture, bless it and let it pass. If it offers a sentence, let the sentence dissolve back into silence, as foam back into the sea. We are not pushing thought away. We are resting in what is here, whether thought behaves or not. God is. God is life. God is love. God is law. God is here. Let these not be a speech, but a soft turning, a returning, until even they fall quiet, and only the felt fact of presence remains. Now, simply listen inside. Not with the ears that catch traffic and footsteps, but with the heart's awareness that knows, I am, before it can say it. Rest as if you are being held from within. Do not ask for anything. Do not promise anything. Be as a child leaning against a sure breast. If there is a warmth, let it spread. If there is only stillness, let it be wide. If there is nothing you can name, let the nothing be holy. Here, without trying, a whisper begins that is not made of words. Fear not, I am with thee. I, in the midst of thee, am mighty. Do you feel how the personal speaker has grown quiet? How the atmosphere in you has changed tone? You are not alone in this silence. The silence is not yours. It is the very atmosphere of spirit, the infinite invisible, making itself known as the life of you. Lo, I am with you unto the end of the world. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Stay a moment longer with the bare I, not grabbing, not decorating, just consenting. When you touch this simple sense of being, you stand at the door of the indwelling presence, and the door is opening from the inside. Stay just as you are. Nothing to add, nothing to improve. Thoughts will do what they do. Lists, memories, the old white poodle trotting for attention. And we do not argue. We do not decorate. We do not chase. We simply withdraw interest, as you might let a radio play in a distant room without turning your head. You are not the program. You are the awareness in which it plays and fades. Let it pass. Remain with the quiet fact, I. Now hear, not with ears, but in the heart's chamber. Look to me. Look within. Be still. If a need parades itself, rent, health, approval, do not bristle, do not bargain. Make the holy exchange in this instant. Not I need, but God is. God is life. So what was called health is the activity of God being itself. God is substance. So what was called supply is God's fullness appearing as form. If a tremor says, I fear, let the assurance rise and replace it. I am with thee. I will never leave thee, nor forsake thee. If the planner frets, how will it work? Hear the old word that never aged. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Not my plan, but God is the plan and the fulfillment, the cause and the appearing, the law and its own enforcement. God is. God is. God is. And in that turning, the mind's argument loses its audience. Now let us be silent together. No counting, no holding the breath hostage. Simply return and return again to the simple awareness of being. If a sentence forms, let it finish and dissolve. If a picture waves, let it pass behind the curtain. Come home to I. Listen into the stillness as if a friend were about to speak, and you consent to hear without directing a word. Look to me. Look within. Be still. What does communion feel like? Not fireworks, not strain, not the chest beating to prove a point. It is a settling, a quiet authority that does not have to shout. It is the sense of rightness without a reason you can quote. It is an inward yes, as if the ground beneath you says, I am bearing you, and you know it. The brow smooths. The breath finds its own pace. The argument dims, and a presence remains. In that presence, the phrases you have heard since childhood take on life. Fear not, I am with thee. I, in the midst of thee, am mighty. Lo, I am with you unto the end of the world. Stay one moment more. Let the I speak without words by letting the mind stop interrupting. Not, I am making this happen. But God is living himself as the life of me. Not, I must hold to God, but God is holding me. Not, I must talk God into my affairs, but stand still. I am the life, the way, the law within you. When at last you open your eyes, walk softly, as if the sanctuary moves with you, because it does. Keep listening. The silent consent you have given will go before you, and where the mind once argued, the Christ will assure. At first the heart imagines too. I hear, God there. I speaking, God hearing. I seeking, God withholding until I perform correctly. But as you remain in the hush we have opened, the distance that seemed so reasonable begins to soften, to thin, to disappear. And what you took to be a space between becomes alive. This living between, this inner contact, this felt presence that is neither your thought nor your effort, is the Holy Ghost, the very activity of spirit within consciousness, the meeting that is not a meeting of two, but the recognition of one. Here, individuality is not erased, it is fulfilled. As a ray is not other than the sun, and yet shines as its own beam, so you remain yourself, and yet are not apart. God is. God is. God is. And in that recognition, the breath lengthens, and the old sense of distance is seen to have been only suggestion. Do you hear how the Master spoke from this place? I can of my own self do nothing. The Father within me, He doeth the works. That was not pious theater. It was disclosure. It is the law of communion. When the Holy Ghost, the living between, is felt, initiative is no longer in the hands of the personal planner. The Word moves. The Father acts. Prayer ceases to be a speech to God and becomes the willingness that lets God be God as the life of you. My doctrine is not mine, the human voice yields. The Spirit quickeneth, the inner assurance answers. And the refrain rises on its own authority, addressing you now. Fear not. I in the midst of thee am mighty. I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. Be very clear, this is not self-deification. It is surrender. Not, I have become God, but God is expressing His own nature as my being. Not the personality enlarged, but the personality quieted. Not the human mind crowned, but the human mind hushed, until the mind that is God can be recognized as the very awareness in which you live and move and have being. Not, I am wise, but God is omniscience, appearing as right seeing and right acting in the moment of need. Not, I am strong, but God is omnipotence, so there is no second power to fear or fight. Not, I am wealthy, but the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, so substance answers to its source without strain. From this inner union flows practicality, quiet, unforced, natural. Ideas present themselves without sweat. Doors open where walls stood. Protections arrive as right place, right time, right stillness. You find yourself kept, not because you have out-argued danger, but because the presence you have allowed to be presence is a fortress and a shelter. Guidance is not a voice you chase. It is the simple next step revealed when you are not inventing it. Supply is not magic. It is form conforming to principle when you are no longer treating form as cause. God is. God is. God is the law and its own enforcement, the life and its own activity, the love and its own fulfillment. Abide here. Keep the holy between alive by your daily consent, and watch separation dissolve into the one life lived. God as your life, God as your wisdom, God as your sufficiency. And the Holy Ghost will be recognized as the ever-present bond that, in silence, makes two one. Now let us be very clear where we lean, because the next test of your communion will not be in a chapel. It will be in a court office, in a doctor's waiting room, before a radio broadcasting war, or at a desk where rumors of layoffs drift like smoke. The temptation will be to reach for something visible: money, influence, insurances, alarms, contacts, and to believe that if you can clutch a strong enough piece of the visible, you will feel safe. But our reliance is in the infinite invisible, not in anything that's visible. These things are channels, sometimes fine channels, but they are not the source. They come and go, they appear and fade, and if you set your heart on them, your heart will move with their tides. Is the steel plate the protection? Or is the Word of God the protection? Decide that now, in your heart, because in the hour of noise, you will act from the place you have already chosen. God is a fortress and a shelter. Underneath are the everlasting arms. God is omnipresence. Where is the second place from which danger could attack? God is omnipotence. What rival force remains to threaten? God is law. What disorder can defy the principle that is all in all? God is, God is, God is. Hold there until the atmosphere within you grows still. Then your actions will be ordered by the one acting, not by fear. Let me make it simple. The envelope arrives. Court date set. Your name in bold. The mind rushes. Which judge? Which attorney? What chance? Stand still. Make your contact first. Father, Thou art the law in the midst of me. Thou art justice without partiality. Thou art the activity of order here. Be silent. In that silence, you may be led to one phone call, not 10. To one admission, not a parade of self-justifications. To a document located in peace instead of a box ripped apart in panic. Or you may be led to say nothing at all and let the word go before you. The rightness does not come from cleverness. It comes because you did not abandon the infinite invisible for the visible scramble. A report lands on the table. Numbers, images, a diagnosis that shouts. The old habit is to argue with figures or to clutch at counterfigures. Stand still. God is life, the only life. The breath that breathes you is His. In the hush, you may find yourself quietly guided. This physician, this treatment, this rest, this food, this prayer, this forgiveness. And the fear that hardens the body loosens. The healing is the presence recognized. The steps you take are its form, not your anxiety marching. The headlines flare. War there, rumor here, shortages in between. You are not asked to be naive. You are asked not to be hypnotized. Stand still and realize, God is the life of all life. God is the only government in which righteousness is law. God is the only power. From that anchorage, you will know what to do. Give here. Open your home here. Write this letter to your representative without venom. Refuse this contagious hatred. Restrain this speech that would inflame. Act with courage without hysteria. Silence does not retire you from life. It fits you to serve life without becoming its casualty. Your supervisor floats uncertainties. The company trims sails. Your savings look thin. The old reflex is to flatter, to manipulate, to send out 100 resumes with a trembling hand. Stand still. God is substance. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. God is activity. Your calling is God's appearing as function. In quiet you will be shown. Polish this skill. Contact this person. Start this modest work at your kitchen table. Stay where you are for now and be faithful, or move when the inner yes is unmistakable. And you will find that doors open as timing, as favor, as a sentence spoken at the right moment to the right ear. Supply does not trickle from men, but flows through men when your heart is set upon the source. Do you see how silence changes everything without making you passive? You are not sedated. You are directed. The right phone call replaces 50 nervous ones. The right restraint replaces the brilliant speech that would have cost you. The right compassion replaces the rescuing frenzy that breaks what it tries to mend. The right timing appears because you did not run ahead of the pillar of cloud by day and the fire by night. This is reliance. Not I am protected. Not I am supplied. But I in the midst of you am mighty. Fear not. I will never leave you nor forsake you. From here, life orders life. The infinite invisible becomes the quiet government of your days, and protection and supply cease to be hopes. They become the nature of the presence, recognized and allowed to be presence in you. If you would have this communion cease to be an emergency rope and become the air you breathe, make your daily contact with me. Never permit a day to pass without some quiet, peaceful turning. Short is fine. Regular is essential. Think of it as 3 simple lamps you light. In the morning, before the phone and the headlines, a few minutes of consent. God is. At midday, when the machinery is hot, a brief returning. God is. In the evening, as the day loosens its grip, a gentle release. Father, into thy hands. God is. God is. God is. And your room becomes a sanctuary not because you fled the world, but because you remembered the one world is in. Do not wait for ideal conditions. Take them. Before the phone, before the inbox, sit down, close your eyes, and let the personal speaker step back. Not, I am ready to conquer the day, but God is the life of this day. God is law governing this hour. God is love acting as this contact, this meeting, this word. At noon, 2 minutes behind a closed door, in a parked car, at your kitchen sink, stand still within and renew the consent. I in the midst of thee am mighty. Let the inner hush rinse away the poodles clamoring for counsel. In the evening, release the ledger. Not, I did well, not, I failed, but God is the doer and the act and the law of fulfillment. Rest there and let sleep find you in trust, not tally. Expect resistance and recognize it for what it is. The old hypnotism begging for attention. It will say, this is doing nothing. You should be solving problems. Hurry. Smile and let it pass. That is the white poodle dressed in a planner's suit. There is nothing to fix about that voice. There is only the returning of attention. not striving for fireworks, not counting mystical feathers as merit badges, not grading your stillness, returning. Again and again, gently, faithfully. The returning is the practice. The consent is the substance. God is. God is. God is. Until the mind gives up its stopwatch and the heart keeps time by presence. If you miss a morning, do not build a temple to failure. Make your contact now. If the midday pause is invaded, do not argue. Claim the evening. If the evening is noisy, take a midnight minute. Be simple, be steady. This is discipline, yes, but discipline in love. Hear the assurance addressed to you. Look to me. Look within. Be still. I will never leave you nor forsake you. What begins as 3 lamps becomes a sky. In time, you will discover that the silence you practice is traveling with you. You carry it into speech. You will find pauses inside your sentences, where wisdom places a word and removes another. You will sense a timing that is not your calculation. You will answer emails and children and strangers from a center that does not wobble. Because the center is not you trying to be centered. The center is God is. And then, without fanfare, communion is no longer occasional. It is the quiet government of your day, the invisible law of your steps, and the tone of your life. Now what happens when the habit of contact ripens? The strain to prove drops out of prayer, and something gentle but unmistakable takes its place. Before, you remember, we were busy polishing the halo. I am loving, I am peaceful, I am strong. And glancing sideways to see if anyone noticed, all the while a little tight in the chest. After, without fanfare, you find yourself patient where impatience had always rushed in. You listen past a slight to what is really being asked. You speak when needed and are silent when not. And there is no rehearsal behind it. It is not personal virtue. It is presence expressing. God is, God is, God is. And the nature of God appears as you, not because you asserted it, but because you yielded in silence to let it be. You will not have to advertise, I am peaceful. Peace will be the atmosphere you bring into a room, and even the anxious will notice, without knowing why, their shoulders are loosening. You will not have to insist, I am loving. Love will move you to the extra mile and the withheld word, to a firmness that blesses and a tenderness that does not flatter. Not, I am wise, but God is omniscience, and the right word arrives without your nervous outline. Not, I am courageous, but God is omnipotence, and the step you once feared takes itself under your feet. This is demonstration, the word becoming visible as tone, as timing, as deed. In healing and change, you begin to see the same law. You do not wrestle effects, nor bargain with pictures. The white poodle trots in with its costume, symptom, balance, quarrel, and you no longer chase it around the room with holy sticks. You return to the center. God is life, whole and indivisible. God is law, already fulfilling itself. God is substance, the earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. Stand still in that recognition, and the hypnotic outline thins. As light shows rope where fear swore snake, conditions reveal their right form, or simply pass, and there is no victory to boast of because there was no second power to conquer. The change that appears is not your triumph. It is reality undenied. We die daily into this, and it is joy. Not morbid self-beating, but the glad surrender of the personal manager, again and again, so that the inner I may be the life of the scene. Today you notice the rush to defend and let it die. Tomorrow, the itch to impress presents itself, and you let it die. The next day, the fear of tomorrow taps the glass, and you let it die. Each yielding makes more room for the Christ life to be felt as center. I can of my own self do nothing. The Father within me, He doeth the works. And the works appear. Let your words now become servants of the word, not substitutes for it. Use them to point, to bless, to clarify. Never again to try to manufacture what only presence is. Keep the silence first, make your consent, and then let speech follow as form follows principle. Do this, and prayer turns to demonstration, God's nature expressed as your day. And you will find that you no longer have to say it, it shines. Fear not, I in the midst of thee am mighty. I will never leave thee, nor forsake thee. Now take this with you as you rise. Words may comfort, but silence reveals. Effort may busy the mind, but consent opens the door. Not I am, but God is. Not fixing appearances, but awakening from them. We have looked at the pictures long enough. Poodles, snakes in ropes, tracks that seem to meet, and we have learned to stand still and let light be light. God is life. God is law. God is love. God is here. And when you stop managing prayer and yield to presence, the word ceases to be sound and becomes substance. So wherever you are, office, hospital, courtroom, kitchen, make the same inward move. Stand still. Turn from the clamoring outer to the quiet inner. Pause. One breath will do. Consent. Father, be what thou art in the midst of me. Feel the simple I that asks for nothing and needs no badge. Rest a moment in the assurance that speaks itself. I am with thee. Then proceed, not driven by fear or cleverness, but guided by the one who has already gone before you. Let the step take you. Do not drag it. This is your on-the-spot practice. You do not need an hour. You need a turning. You do not need a formula. You need a consent. Pause. Let the shoulders drop. Consent. Release the planner's grip. Feel the quiet eye that never sleeps, the backdrop of being before a thought has time to dress itself. Abide just a breath in the promise that is older than your trouble. Lo, I am with you unto the end of the world. Now speak if you are moved. Be silent if you are kept. Act when the inner yes is unmistakable. God is. God is. God is. The doer, the doing, and the done. Carry this expectation cleanly. Communion is available now. Not through more words, but through the silence that recognizes Christ within. Not, I am secure, but God is a fortress and a shelter. Not, I am wise, but God is omniscience, revealing itself as right seeing and right timing. Not, I am supplied, but the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Not, I must hold to God, but I in the midst of you am mighty. Make your stand here, and the word will become flesh as poise, as provision, as protection, as peace that does not need a reason. And now hear it addressed to you, without hesitation. Fear not, I am with thee. I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. I in the midst of thee am mighty. Stand still, and let this be the government of your day. Stand still, and let this be the law in your members. Stand still, and watch as the presence you have recognized lives your life as its own expression. Go in quietness. Go in confidence. Go in this one assurance: God is. And let the Word become flesh in you.